I got angry when I found out my sister has been using my wedding photos in her dating profile, and now she's calling me petty. So here's the situation that's got me, a 29-year-old, feeling pretty annoyed, and now I'm apparently being labeled as petty for even bringing it up. I got married a few months ago, and it was a beautiful, intimate day. We kept it simple, but we hired a professional photographer, and I'm thrilled with how the photos turned out. They're genuinely some of my favorite memories, and the photos mean a lot to me. My younger sister Laura, who's 25, was my maid of honor, and we took so many nice photos together. She's single and joked a few times at the wedding about wishing she'd be next in line to find her own Mr. Right. I laughed it off because I knew she was just feeling a little lonely and meant no harm. Fast forward to a few weeks ago, I noticed that Laura had updated her dating profile on one of those apps she uses. I didn't think anything of it until a mutual friend sent me a screenshot and asked if I knew she was using pictures from my wedding as her profile pictures. And when I say using, I mean like half her profile was just pictures from my wedding day. There she is in her bridesmaid dress, posing next to me in my wedding gown, and a few shots of her all done up from the big day. There was even one where she had her arm linked with my husband, Nick 32, in a goofy photo we'd all taken for fun. I guess she thought the whole wedding vibe would make her profile look better. I felt weird seeing it, like she was trying to leverage the whole wedding look to attract guys, and honestly, it felt disrespectful. I wouldn't have minded if she'd used a single picture from that day, but almost all her profile pictures were from my wedding, not just casual snapshots or solo pics. It just didn't sit right with me, so I called her up and asked her if she could take down a few, explaining that I wasn't comfortable with her using so many of our wedding photos like that. Laura got super defensive and told me I was being petty and jealous because she looked great in those photos, and the guy she's matched with had been loving them. She said they were her pictures too, and since she was in them, she should be able to do whatever she wants with them. I told her I get that she looked great, she really did, but it still felt weird for her to use them like some sort of dating bait when it was supposed to be a special day for me and Nick. She even called me self-centered for making it a big deal, saying it's just photos. I tried explaining my side again, but she kept dismissing my feelings. I even brought up the fact that she's got plenty of photos of herself that aren't tied to my wedding. She could easily pick from other events if she really needed some dressed-up pictures. But she wouldn't budge, saying those were the best pictures she had in years, and she didn't understand why I was hoarding them. I reminded her that these weren't just any pictures. They were from a day that was deeply personal and meaningful to me. It felt like she was using a part of that day to sell herself to potential dates, which felt pretty inappropriate and misleading. The more I thought about it, the more it rubbed me the wrong way. What if people thought she'd been in a serious relationship or had even been married before? I know it sounds dramatic, but it's not hard to see how someone could interpret those photos as her having been in a serious wedding event. And knowing how sentimental I am about that day just makes it worse. Nick thinks it's a bit weird too, but he's also one of those pick your battles kind of people and doesn't want me to cause a huge rift over it. He's tried to be supportive, though, saying he understands why I'm uncomfortable. But he also thinks I might want to let it go eventually, since it's not hurting us directly. I even tried explaining this to Laura over coffee one last time, hoping an in-person chat would help. But she just doubled down, saying she'd never ask anyone to take down photos they felt good about, even if it was from her own wedding. She then threw in some snide comments about how I'm lucky to be married, and that she's just trying to look her best on dating apps, so she doesn't see the problem. At that point, I had no idea what to say. So now we're in this weird limbo. I haven't unfriended her or anything, but I've definitely been a little distant. It feels like a betrayal, honestly, and I can't believe she doesn't understand how using those photos is making me feel. She still calls occasionally, and we have regular sibling small talk, but I feel like there's this huge elephant in the room whenever we talk now. She's happily going about her dating life, and meanwhile, I'm left feeling like I've somehow turned into the bad guy for just asking for a little respect for my wedding day. Am I being petty, like she says? I genuinely don't think I'm asking that much, just a little respect for what's probably the most important day of my life. I didn't think asking her to remove most of the photos was out of line, but now she's acting like I'm trying to ruin her love life. Update 1. A few weeks later. So, after my last post, I've had some time to think it over and a couple of new things have happened. First off, thank you all so much for the support and for helping me realize I'm not being unreasonable. I wasn't sure if I was just overreacting or if I had some weird wedding day entitlement, but it's comforting to know that other people agree with me. So, the situation with my sister Laura hasn't really changed, but I've definitely taken a step back to approach it a bit differently. After I posted, I realized I was so wrapped up in feeling hurt and betrayed that I hadn't really stopped to listen to her side as much as I should have. I mean, I was upset, and I didn't give her a chance to explain herself without immediately trying to defend my own feelings. So, I called her last week to talk again. The conversation started a little awkwardly, but I tried to approach it more calmly. I told her I'd had some time to think, and that maybe I'd been too emotional last time we talked. I wanted to try to get her to understand that I wasn't trying to control her or be petty. It was about how those photos felt personal to me. I explained that I wasn't trying to take away her confidence or her dating opportunities, but that the wedding photos weren't just pictures. They were a huge part of my relationship with Nick and a special moment in my life. Laura still didn't totally get it, but she did admit that maybe she didn't realize how much those photos meant to me. She said she thought they looked really good and was just excited that the photos made her look so polished for her dating profile. I get that, I really do. I know how hard it can be to feel good about yourself when you're single. But at the same time, I told her that it still feels wrong for me, and I didn't want her using those specific photos to try to sell herself. I also suggested that she could maybe use some other nice photos of herself from other events. She's got tons of family photos from vacations or parties that would work just as well. But of course, she got defensive again. She said those were her best photos and she didn't want to have to settle for second best just because they weren't taken at a wedding. Honestly, I get it, but it still doesn't feel right to me. In the end, she agreed to take down the photo of her and Nick, which was the main one that made me the most uncomfortable. But she's kept the other ones up. One's with her in the bridesmaid dress and the shots where she's just in the background of the ceremony. I guess that's something, at least. I'm still not totally happy with the situation. I know I could just let it go, like Nick says, but every time I see her profile pop up or hear her talk about how much the guys are loving her photos, it stings a little. I don't want to keep making a big deal out of it, but at the same time, I feel like if I don't stand my ground now, she'll just keep pushing boundaries. I'm still trying to figure out where to go from here. I'm not going to completely cut her off, but I'm definitely feeling distant. I don't know if I'm just being dramatic, but I feel like we're not as close anymore, and it's like the trust is gone. So, to answer the main question from last time, no, I'm not backing down. I'm not asking for her to remove every single wedding photo, but I've asked her for some basic respect, and I feel like I'm still waiting for her to truly get it. If she doesn't, I'll just have to let it go, but it's hard. Thanks again to everyone who supported me. I'll keep you updated if anything changes. Edit. I'm really trying to be fair about the whole situation. And I know I can't control Laura's dating life. I just want her to understand how much that day meant to me, and I don't think that's unreasonable. Also, some people mentioned that I should just let it go entirely, and maybe I'll get there. But right now, it still feels too fresh, and I don't want to feel like I'm being walked all over. I'll see where things go. Update 2 weeks later. Hey everyone, thanks so much for the feedback and support in my last update. I've been trying to take a step back and approach this situation with more perspective, but things have been a bit complicated since then. So, after the conversation I had with Laura, I thought we were making progress. She took down the photo with Nick, which was the biggest issue for me. But as time passed, I realized the problem still wasn't fully solved. She did keep the other wedding photos up on her dating profile, so the ones where she's in her bridesmaid dress or just hanging out in the background of some group shots. And honestly, it still kind of bothered me. It's like, yeah, they're not as intrusive as the one with Nick, but they're still very much tied to my wedding, and it just didn't sit right with me. I didn't want to keep being a broken record, though, so I let it slide for a while. But then, a few days ago, I saw Laura post on social media about how she finally found someone amazing through one of her dating apps. And there, in the caption, she had tagged the wedding photos again, making it seem like she was still using them as her main way to attract attention. It wasn't even subtle, like really obvious that the wedding photos were still the selling point. So I decided to have another talk with her. I know some of you suggested I just let it go, but it's been bugging me more than I expected, and I realized I'd never really told her how much it hurt that she was still using those photos after everything. I called her up, and to be honest, I was a little nervous because I didn't want to come off as controlling or petty. But I told her how uncomfortable it made me to still see those photos being used like that. especially now that she'd made it such a point to talk about her dating success. She got defensive again, but this time she didn't call me petty right away. She said she was just proud of how good she looked in those pictures and felt like it was the best version of herself she'd had in a while. I get that she's excited about her dating life, and I told her that I wasn't trying to take away her confidence or stop her from using photos she liked. But I reiterated that those photos were part of a very personal and meaningful day for me, and it felt weird that she was using them to make herself look more appealing to guys. This time, though, she did seem to hear me a little more. She apologized for not fully understanding why it bothered me and said that she'd take down the group shots from the wedding. I didn't ask her to remove every single photo, but I told her that I'd feel a lot better if she could at least take down the ones where she was front and center in her bridesmaid dress, as it still felt too much like she was trying to claim some of the specialness of that day for herself. She agreed, but then said something that kind of stung. She mentioned that she didn't really understand why I was still so attached to those photos. I explained again that it's not about the photos themselves, but about what they represent. She said she would try to be more mindful moving forward, but it honestly still feels like there's some distance between us. At this point, I'm just exhausted from trying to explain my feelings. I want to be the bigger person here, but I also don't want to keep pushing boundaries with someone who clearly doesn't fully get it. I think we're both trying, but I'm still not sure if we'll ever see eye to eye on this. It feels like she's more focused on the photos than the deeper meaning behind them. I'm trying to let it go, but it's honestly still a little frustrating. I don't want to make a big deal out of it, but at the same time, I don't want to feel like I'm being dismissed. I'm just hoping with time, we can get back to a more comfortable place where it doesn't feel so weird. Thanks again for all the feedback and advice. I'll keep you updated if anything changes. Edit. After reading some of your comments, I just want to clarify that I'm really not trying to control my sister's dating life. I totally understand that she's trying to present her best self, but I just don't feel comfortable with her using such personal moments from my life to get attention. I'm working on letting it go, but it's still a little hard.